What is going on, everyone? Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of the Ducks Dish podcast. I'm your host, Max Torres with ScoopDuck on 3, coming to you from Long Beach, California. Got a big live stream episode of the pod for you guys today, joined by ScoopDuck owner and publisher Justin Hopkins in what has become an eventful day in the world of Oregon football recruiting. So we are coming to you live on YouTube at the ScoopDuck on 3 YouTube channel, as well as my Twitter account at mtorresports. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. But Justin, how are you doing? Good to see you again.
Yeah, like we talk about several times, it's nice when there's stuff to talk about, and today has given us just that. Really, the last few days have done that. So yeah, nice to hop on here. Hopefully answer some questions as people tune in and have a nice little broadcast here.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. Well, starting us off, Justin, let's start on, I guess, maybe a little bit more of the positive side, if you will, but as important as you and I have both repeatedly said, you got to talk about the good and the bad, because it's not always good news in this industry. But because we're fortunate enough to cover a team like Oregon, it's mostly good news. So the big story of the day, at least the headliner of our show, it's in the title today, the nation's #1 cornerback on 3+ 5-star DJ Pickett out of Zephyr Hills, Florida, has set a commitment date for July 17th. And it looks like the teams that are in the race still are Oregon, Miami, LSU, and Georgia, maybe Florida on the outside looking in. But I think those are the schools that we have heard most prominently. So let's just kind of dive into that coming from on 3's Chad Simmons. But what are you thinking there, J-Hop?
Tough, right? I mean, we both sit here knowing that it's really tough to know where these 5-stars are going. I know we'll talk about it later, but there was an elite 4-star committing earlier today with the finalists, 3 finalists. And really, nobody knew where he was going until about 20 minutes before his announcement. And I got a feeling DJ Pickett's going to be a lot like that. I think you're going to hear about Oregon. You're going to hear about LSU. You're going to hear about Miami. Because let's be real, even though that's only 2 weeks away, that's 2 weeks away. That's a long time in recruiting. So I guess to answer your question today, I've been very adamant, and I think you've been pretty close with me. Oregon's in the top 2. Okay, I believe Oregon's been in the top 2. I've never come out and said Oregon is led. Maybe, Steve Wiltfong feels a little bit differently today, kind of hinting that maybe Oregon has the slight edge right now. But I've been adamant that Oregon's been in this recruitment and is in the top 2, where a lot of people basically have continued to mention LSU and Miami, Florida, while they were mostly in it. And then Georgia's kind of come on the scene here. So it seems like everybody's wanted to give those other schools the benefit of the doubt until today. And now all of a sudden we're hearing like, oh yeah, Oregon's definitely in this. Like, yeah, I know they've been in it. And to me, the one thing that sticks out to me is Oregon's been the constant. I think that second team has maybe changed a little bit. I think it's been LSU at times. I think it's been Miami at times. I think maybe Florida was in there for a while. I think Oregon's been the constant, at least in that top 2, in my opinion, for the last 3 or 4 months.
Yeah, this has been a recruitment that I've tried my best to follow really closely, Justin. And I think I told you heading into On 3 Elite in Nashville, when I traveled across the country to that event, I know I might sound like a broken record referencing it so much, but man, it was so much fun. And there was just such a ridiculous amount of talent there. I say all that to say this: DJ Pickett was the guy I was most excited to see and most excited to talk to, because he just has a very small circle. I don't feel like he himself does a ton of media. I think a lot of the updates you see come from his dad. Nothing wrong with that. That's just how they've chosen to run this thing. But the big sentiment coming out of that event was that Oregon, shouldn't be slept on, and they should be viewed as a serious contender here. And the little tidbit that I'll bring to the table here is that Oregon really did a good job in this official visit. But let me not just say they just did a good job. Let's get into some specifics, because I feel like every school can say that, right? Basically, the source that I was talking to told me that they went completely off the script with this visit. No concrete itinerary, really. They just kind of hung out in Eugene and did what Pickett wanted to do. and had a lot of heart to hearts. So I think that just speaks to probably his comfort or comfortability in Eugene. And he's been there so many times already. Maybe he was kind of over the official visit thing because he did come in that June 21st window, that weekend when the Ducks had their most star-studded guys on campus. But yeah, I think that was just kind of a unique approach for Oregon. I don't know if other schools did that. I know LSU brought in Patrick Peterson during his visit out in Baton Rouge. But yeah, I mean, to your point, I feel like I've been pretty consistent as well. Just maybe not saying top two, but I think that Oregon's always had a really good shot here. Admittedly, though, it's tough to be too confident with some of these Florida guys.
Yeah, I think this is a guy that's been open to leaving the state. I think a lot of folks have not really kind of caught on to that. This doesn't scream to me, I mean, like some of the guys Oregon's recruiting out of Texas, I'll just say, for example, DeCorian Moore, feels like a really tough guy to pull out of the state of Texas. I'm not saying impossible. He just feels like a guy that, like if Oregon, the school Oregon was in the state of Texas, I think it'd be a Duck yesterday, but it's not. And with DJ Pickett, my point is I haven't felt like distance has been this massive hurdle. Furthermore, what I've liked about the Ducks, what I know has been a big part of his recruitment and a big reason why the Ducks are where they are, is because, as we know, he's a taller, longer corner. And Oregon, the last 2 years, has had tremendous success, obtaining and developing Christian Gonzalez, obviously going into the Patriots in the league. Of course, Kyrie had a really good year last year, didn't go in the first round, but still got developed and was an NFL draft pick. So that right there is something that I think Oregon has really hit home on. Not to mention, they run an SEC style defense, and everybody knows that. I mean, they're going to be physical. They've got the guys up front. And I know that you need a good secondary, like a good corner loves a good corner opposite him, loves good safety help, but they love nothing more than having guys up front that create pressure and make the quarterbacks move around and shorten that time that the quarterback has to throw. That's what I think, if you look at Pickett, that's probably what he's looking at most is, hey, is there a good defensive line here? Do I need to go and guard these really fast wide receivers for 6 or 7 seconds? Because there's not any corners that can do that. And so all those things, I think the chance to compete for a national championship, I mean, it feels like that's what Oregon's building towards. So I think all those things are in Oregon's favor. And again, this one doesn't feel like distance is the biggest hurdle. Now, that said, I think Miami and LSU are two huge threats. And as we know, distance is in their favor. I just don't feel like that's going to be the, backbreaker in this recruitment.
Yeah, and the whole distance factor, you have to mention it when you're talking about guys like this, but maybe to Oregon's favor here, they do have a couple of Tampa commits already, Tampa natives, I should say, in the fold with Zaire Addison and Dallas Wilson, of course. So maybe that's something that I don't think that's why they did it, but that's something that I think it's worked out to the way that it could help them kind of create that home away from home feeling, have him be more comfortable making that cross-country trip. And then to your point with the NFL development, I think some of these interviews, when I talk to recruits, they'll say, I don't have any choice or control, rather, might be the better word, over where I land in the NFL draft. So I got to get comfortable with that, playing out of my element or playing somewhere different or playing away from family. Like, those are all things that are going to come to light if they do end up, playing their cards right and becoming NFL draft caliber players. So I think that's something that factors in with Pickett here. And then the Ducks have done really well developing guys at his position. I think that also helps with them, helps their case. And like you said, the defensive linemen, they're just crushing it at Oregon. And I think they're ready to take another step forward in 2024. So I'm feeling good about Oregon's chances. And I think maybe the other point I'll add here, the Ducks did get the last official visit, or at least what's looking like the last trip before he makes his decision on July 17th. And maybe just to remind our viewers and listeners here, Justin, DJ Pickett was planning to announce during his team's bye week in October. So I don't know if it was, hey, I'm just done with this process. Our family's been traveling all over the country, whatever it was, or maybe it was, man, that, and I'm sure Oregon fans want to think this, maybe it's the reality. That Oregon trip was amazing. I've seen everything I need to see. Let's make this thing happen. And I know you and I have talked about how that later decision date could benefit them, but it's hard to see this development and not view it as a positive one for Oregon.
Yeah, the wild card to me is this. I felt that him, delaying until October meant that he was really wanting to see, maybe what Miami or at the time Florida might do this season. Billy Napier's obviously got a warm seat already. Mario Cristobal's seats, like, we'll just say semi-warm a little bit. There's a lot of chatter down there in Miami, and you would think, okay, maybe he just wants to see those teams, this fall a little bit and see what happens there. But now he moves up the timeline and there's no football being played. So now you wonder, okay, does that mean he knew he wanted to go to Oregon all along and he's ready to call it? Or, he's ready to go to Miami or LSU or whatever? Because I think LSU is on the outside looking in. That's just my assumption here. And, my belief in that is because I think Brian Kelly made some very damaging remarks about NIL and LSU and the way they were going to utilize LSU in recruiting. I don't blame him. Like, I don't think any coach loves this, bidding war, if you will, for recruits. It's never going to change. There's no way they're ever going to cap this or structure this. If you started it this way, they're going to finish it this way. There's no going back. So that leads me to think that DJ Pickett's going to demand a very lucrative NIL package. That leads me to think that Miami and Oregon are the two that are going to play ball here. I could be wrong, but it feels like those are the two. And you just got to like the fact that Oregon's got that, development for longer corners on their side in the past couple of years under Dan Lanning.
The last point that I'll add here on DJ Pickett, Justin, before we kind of move on here, good players want to play with good players, and the Dorian and the Ducks got a good Dorian. The Ducks got a good one in Dorian Brew, the 5-star corner, just this last weekend. So for whatever that's worth, I think that probably helps their appeal. Maybe the two got to spend some time together in Nashville because Brew was also at On3 Elite. So I think it's pretty easy to make Oregon's case here, but I think it's been hard, at least for me, when I posted this on the board earlier today. History makes it hard for me to be confident for Oregon with Florida guys. But that said, I want to be more confident, and I'm feeling pretty confident, but you just have to temper expectations, I think. And, I'll have to make some more calls and see what kind of scoop I can get. So I think that's like the last thing that I was just going to add there with DJ Pickett. Like, I want to be confident and I'm feeling confident, but it's like, I don't know. It's like, hey, I don't want to get hurt again in like a relationship or something, that kind of an analogy.
No, I agree with you. Richard Young comes to mind, right? 5-star running back out of Florida. Was he in Florida? Anyways, he was down in that area. I think he was from Louisiana. Anyway, same thing. Everybody kind of thinks maybe Oregon's actually going to get a 5-star. And of course they don't. And, they have Dallas Wilson committed. He wasn't a 5-star at the time of his commitment, which, he is now, and they've been able to hang on to him. But if you look at the schools that are, circling around him right now, obviously it's the Florida schools. So, to your point with Pickett, are we going to set ourselves up to get hurt again? The Ducks, whatever, trying to pull a 5-star out of the Southeast and it's getting over the hurdle. Or here's this. I believe that Oregon has an opportunity for a corner to come in and potentially start next year. I think there's a lot to sell with that. I think Jabbar Muhammad, yet again, is going to come in and have a good year at Oregon. He's going to be off to the NFL. I think you're going to see that guy float around the first round, maybe second round, somewhere in there, first, second round. I think Jabbar Muhammad is going to find himself on an NFL team. So that spot's going to be open. Pickett, Brew, basically all these guys are going to come in and compete for that spot along with the current cornerbacks on the roster. I think there's a lot of appeal for that for a guy like DJ Pickett.
And maybe to mention Dallas Wilson here, it feels like Oregon is doing all the right things, and it seems like there's confidence not just from you and I, but from some of the national analysts that they're going to be able to hang on to him. So long way to go between now and December, of course. We know that. Oregon knows that, and they're going to do everything they can to be diligent with how they manage all of these recruitments. And before we get into our next topic on today's episode of the Ducks Dish podcast, we are brought to you in part by Ranchito Grill in Springfield. Not sure what your dinner plans are for tonight, but head on over to Ranchito at 1537 Mohawk Boulevard. You got to give their homemade tortillas a try. They got great food, a great environment, and they will take care of you. Say what's up to my guy Ruben and let him know that Max Torres sent you. So glad to have you guys along. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Ducks Dish podcast with Justin Hopkins and myself, Max Torres, here on the ScoopDuck on 3 YouTube channel. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. All right, let's get on to the next topic today, Justin. Maybe not the most positive development in the eyes of Oregon fans as 2025 Cincinnati, Ohio, Winton Woods edge Justin Hill announces his commitment to the Alabama Crimson Tide. He was working from a top 4 that also included USC, but really this one came down to a top 3 of Oregon, Ohio State, and of course, Alabama. You had a story up on the site today talking about what's next for Oregon, but just kind of give us your thoughts a little bit about your reaction to how that one unfolded, and then we can get into what's next.
Yeah, I mean, tough break, right? And like you alluded to in the intro, we're here to talk about the good and the bad. And that's just the way some of these recruitments are going to go. You're not going to land every 5-star that you have on campus. You're not going to land every top 100 player that you host on an official visit. It's not going to happen. It just can't happen. So a tough one here. And why is it tough? First of all, he's a really good player. First of all, we know, second of all, we know Oregon was definitely a player here. It was a Final 3. It felt like Oregon was definitely in the top 2. We could be wrong on that, but no worse. They were in the top 3. I do think they were in the top 2 for what it's worth. I think Ohio State really struggled with this. Ohio State's basically recruiting him to play a position they've never had before on defense, right? They're going to change their defense up a little bit, obviously change defensive coordinators, and they're going to basically implement that jack linebacker edge type position, which Oregon has had and Alabama has had. Ohio State has not. So I think that hurt them overall in this recruitment. You don't know what that – you could tell them, but you don't know what that position is going to look like. And Oregon, meanwhile, can grab some tape and say, here's, how we played this position the last 2 years. Here's this player, that player. You'd fit, and Alabama could do the same, of course. So why this hurts is the fact that, as I wrote, there are not very many good edge prospects in this class. There's just not. I mean, it's, and there was obviously even fewer that Oregon was in the mix for. Not all is lost, though, because it's really easy to forget that Oregon's got 4-star linebacker / edge Nasir Wyatt already committed, strongly committed. Everything's great there. They're going to play a similar role, a similar way. They're not the same player, but they can be similar. So that, coupled with the fact of the way Oregon has recruited that position the last 2 years, yes, they did miss on Hill. It is a whiff. But it's not dire needs. It's not like they need to go find a guy tomorrow because they have nobody coming in. They're good at this position for at least the next 2 years if they need to be. But as we know, Oregon's in the business of obtaining as much talent as you can and making each position group better. That's what Hill definitely would have done for Oregon. But again, I don't know that they necessarily pivot to anybody in this recruiting class because I still don't believe Dan Lanning's at any point going to panic and start just bringing in a body so they can have, we got to go get an edge player now. Who can we offer? Who can we get? He doesn't operate that way. Okay. So I think Oregon, if they're going to pivot here, they're going to say, all right, we didn't get Justin Hill. We already have Nasir Wyatt. We're good at the position. Let's just see if any of these 2 or 3 guys that we kind of like develop this fall. If not, we can see what enters the transfer portal. I think that's how Oregon plays this moving forward. Again, bummer to lose Hill. But also, if we were looking back in January at my most important position groups for Oregon to sign in this class, that was not one of them. So I feel pretty good about it. Good get for Alabama.
Phenomenal get for Alabama. I mean, they are probably the hottest team in the country right now when it comes to just the sheer amount of talent and the caliber of talent that Kalen DeBoer and the Tide have been able to sign or add, I should say, since June 1st. So, they can't all go Oregon's way. I was also hearing that Oregon was in the top 2 as the final hours of this recruitment kind of wound down. And I think one of the other maybe broader points we can talk about here, Justin, it's interesting that this might illuminate, if you will. I don't want to be too dramatic when I'm saying this, but I don't want to say Ohio State losing a hold on the top prospects in the state, but it seems like there was a sliver or a chink in the armor. Is that the right way to say it?
That's a good way to say it.
And so there was a little bit of an opening in that armor, and it seems like a lot of these other schools are trying to plow through it, for lack of a better phrase. With Justin Hill going to Alabama, Dorian Brew is an Ohio native, so I guess not technically an Ohio product, but for all intents and purposes, he just moved to Texas. So it really seemed like he was Ohio State's to lose. And then you and I both have our projections on Trey McNutt from Cleveland to end up at Oregon. So I think that's another one that is kind of an interesting development to hit on here.
No, I agree with you. They're definitely showing some struggles right now. I think that, this is Justin Hill. Justin Hill's a really good football player, and that is a tough loss for Oregon. That's a devastating loss for Ohio. I mean, this kid's in your backyard. He was one of the first kids they offered in this class over 2 years ago. Like, they've recruited him as hard as, basically anybody else they've recruited. That is a stinger for Ohio State. Again, tough loss for Oregon, an absolute stinger for Ohio State to lose out Justin Hill. Of course, they won't go away. They'll continue working on him, trying to flip him. We know that. But like you said, everybody who covers Ohio State or a lot of the national guys felt like Dorian Brew was Ohio State's to lose. And then next thing you know, Oregon plucks him out of thin air. Trey McNutt, you'll look at some of the recruiting guys or the fans or whatever saying, well, Trey McNutt's a good player, but Ohio State didn't have to have him. Maybe you didn't have to have him, but you would have liked to have had him. And that's a really good player that you also, look like you're letting get away. So like you said, and these aren't just like, oh, they lost out on a few guys. No, and then you know what? Here we are. It hasn't even been a week, but it feels like a week. Jordan Davison. They thought they were getting Jordan Davison forever. Now, granted, they already have 2 running backs committed, so that's not a death blow like Justin Hill is. But again, another chink in the armor, just like you said. That was a really good way to play it, because right now, Ohio State's taking some L's.
And we say all of that, Justin. I know that we've been grabbing some more Big Ten viewers on our show, which is awesome. We absolutely love that. Glad everyone's here, regardless of what team you root for. Ohio State still is the number 1 class, at least according to the On3 rankings. So, it's not like I'm saying, oh, man. Neither of us are saying this, right? We're not saying, Oregon's done, or Ohio State is struggling. None of the in-state guys want to go there. That's far from the reality. But I think part of this just shows kind of the ebbs and flows of recruiting and how, Ohio State has a pretty tough standard to live up to. And they're one of the best programs in the country. I have nothing but respect for them. And they're going to continue to be a heavyweight on the recruiting trail, but a couple of them have gotten away in recent recruitments. So I don't know if you have anything else to add on Justin Hill specifically or the edge picture, but we did have a couple questions that we were thinking about maybe hitting before we get out of this shorter live stream.
Yeah, and I just to button it up, I'm with you on Ohio State. That's a ridiculously good recruiting class. It's going to be a phenomenal football team. That's going to be a phenomenal football game in Eugene. So I don't think any Ohio State fans have heard me badmouth them, and I'm not doing that. They've just taken a few L's here, if we're being honest lately, of a great class. But to further a point that I've made at least a month, if not probably longer ago, Ohio State wasn't getting all of them, right? We're looking at all these 5-star DBs, like how was Ohio State in the top 2 or top 3 for all these guys? They weren't going to get them all. That's just, there's no way. And so that's, kind of proved to come out here. Dorian Brew being one. I think Trey McNutt, they probably, won't really pursue getting him back again. So that's in Oregon's favor right now. And that's why Dan Lanning just kind of kept his foot on the gas, is because you knew at some point not all these guys are going to end up at Ohio State, but they do have their share. And it's going to be fun to see Oregon, Ohio State, Georgia, and Alabama competing for those number 1 ranked recruiting classes. I think Texas will be right there too, but all 5 of those schools are recruiting at a ridiculous level. Which
is what makes it so fun to cover and so fun to follow, Justin. I was a a recruiting fan and loved reading your stuff. That's how, I got into this whole thing, reaching out to you and saying, hey, I love this stuff and can't get enough of it. How can I get involved? And here we are 6 years later. No, yeah, 6 years later. So kind of a cool little story there. Maybe it was even longer ago because I feel like the 2016 or 17 class was the one that I followed the most closely. But whatever, that's just getting to specifics. So it says StreamYard's telling me 678 folks here in the live stream between YouTube and Twitter. So big shout out to you guys, the audience, for showing up in such big numbers, and we appreciate it. We want to get into a couple of these questions and comments before we get out of here today, Justin. So this one's from Nick P. Hey, Max, from what you're hearing, who do you think are next two commitments? This one's hard because we kind of just got through this slew of commitments this past week and then a couple of decisions or commitment dates this week to start us off, Justin, but none of those went Oregon's way. I guess if I had to say right now, and I'm not predicting this, I think Pickett is one that you kind of have to mention just because of everything we've talked about on today's show. But maybe the Ducks can make a move with Amarion Robinson, the safety out of Arkansas, who's fresh off of his Oklahoma official visit. I think you might have put a pick in there, Justin. Chris Lawson could be one that you mentioned as someone that could be worth monitoring, but kind of seems like Oregon's going to pass there. But I think those are the three names that kind of come to mind the most for me right now. Maybe Juan Gaston, but that's about a month out. I think those are the names that kind of come to mind for me.
Yeah, just to fill in behind you, I think Pickett's the one, like you said, have to kind of go with that right now. We know of a commitment date. We know Oregon's probably in the top two. So you have to throw out that name. Again, neither of us are saying Oregon's going to get him because so much can change in the next 2 weeks, but that's one worth mentioning. For me, I think, I know there's some scheduled commitments coming in the next 4 days or whatever we have here. I'm not sure that Oregon's going to land any of those guys, and Omarion Robinson's probably the one that would sting the most if they don't get him, just because he's not that highly rated, but Oregon really liked him. He's a really good safety. So I'll throw out a second one, and it's just kind of a shot in the dark. Hasn't set a commitment yet. 5-star athlete Michael Terry. I think maybe, you could see him make a decision in the month of July. And just like with Pickett, I think Oregon's at least in the top two right now. So, I mean, if Pickett and Terry are the next two, boy.
I can definitely echo at least what I've been hearing on Terry with it being that one looks like it's an Oregon-Texas battle, fairly clearly. And I think that that's obviously going to be one to keep an eye on. So I think, that's kind of what I have on that question. Appreciate the question, Nick. Thanks for being here. Diehard Duck fan, been very active in the live chat today. Do you think coaches are pushing for summer commitments? Do you think they care about recruiting momentum and grabbing headlines? I'm going to say no to the first part of this question. I mean, you want to get guys in the fold, but I don't think Oregon's doing it super aggressively as far as when these things happen. Rather, they get a feel when someone's ready, and then, or multiple people are ready, and then you see them organize it the way that they did this past week or so. I mean, I'm sure Dorian Brew told them at some point that he was ready, but that was such a huge development that they probably didn't want him to go public with it as far as I will announce my commitment. That, like, the fact that it came out of the blue the way it did just added on. It was like more grease on the fire for Oregon's momentum at that point. So I think that they do care. However, the second part of this question about recruiting momentum, grabbing headlines, I think that is huge. And there's very few coaches in college football that have been able to do it as well as Dan Lanning has. I'm not saying he's the best, but he is pretty damn good at, creating and capturing that momentum.
I don't know that they necessarily care about recruiting momentum, but they're aware of it. I think that's the way to see it. I think they're aware of, hey, look, Lincoln Kier didn't go our way. Noah McHale didn't go our way. We've taken a couple L's. Let's not panic, but maybe there's some positive momentum we can get out there. And so, I mean, I do know that they're adamant about paying attention to the headlines and the news and things like that. Doesn't mean that they completely strategize around that. But and to answer your question, I don't think they necessarily are concerned with summer commitments, mostly because they're dealing with 5 stars and with NIL now. You're kind of afraid to show your hand, if you will, up front. because all you've done when you've landed a 5-star commitment in the summer now, and I mean this about any school. Okay, I mean this about any school. All you've done is basically set the bidding price. And I'm not saying that's the determining factor in every recruitment. It's not, but it's certainly a very big part of almost all of them. And so, to me, you don't ever really want to kind of like, shoot your wad early, because somebody like Alabama or Georgia or somebody is going to come behind you and try and sweeten the pot. So becomes a very dangerous game. It is a part of recruiting now. And again, this applies to all schools, not just Oregon, but summer commitments can be very dangerous for these elite guys.
All right, let's rattle off a couple more of these, Justin, and then we'll get out of here. We're already at the 30-minute mark, but rapid fire fashion. Marcus Stanley, any clue what Oregon plans to do at linebacker going forward? I think they're going to probably stay involved with all the guys that they have been involved with, but Keelan Moses seems like the biggest name to keep an eye on, him and Noah McHale. Keelan Moses, because we both, Justin, I think I speak for you as well, we think Oregon leads there, even though he is committed to LSU. And then Noah McHale, top guy in SoCal. I think that they're absolutely going to stay in the mix there.
First off, Marcus, love the picture. So salute to, I assume that's you and your service to our country. But good question, really good question, right? Hot topic. Oregon will not give up on Noah McHale. All right, I know he committed to Texas A&M. I know it's July early. They're not going to give up on Noah McHale. Do not lose track of that name come this fall. I think Oregon circles back there, and Max was on the right track. I think Keelan Moses, again, I think they only want to take 2. If you could somehow get McHale back and you can continue the positive trend with Keelan Moses, I think Oregon's got their 2, and they would be happy with those 2 if that can happen.
All right, there we go. Moving on, Scott Condit with a question. What's your feel on O-line recruiting from the state of Utah? I know we were after a couple guys from there. I think the 2 big ones that you're keeping an eye on there are Austin Pay and Aaron Dunn. Both of those guys took official visits to Oregon in the month of June. And I feel like Dunn is the one that is mentioned more heavily with Oregon. But I actually spoke to a coach from the state of Utah, and he was kind of giving me the impression, because he knows of both, that Pay is the nastier of the 2 linemen. So Dunn's a giant, absolute giant human being, but Pay is no slouch in his own right, and I think he needs to get a little bit more discussion.
Yeah, I just don't think Oregon's going to get either 2 of them, I think, for different reasons. But with what they've done so far, that really doesn't signal much panic to me. If this was 2 weeks ago and Addison wasn't committed and Oregon didn't have a few O-line commits at this point, I'd be a little bit more concerned. I'm a lot less concerned now moving forward. I think they're really going to be focusing on Juan Gaston, maybe getting Michael Fasusi back out. And I guess at this point, I'm not sure they're going to sign any offensive lineman from Utah.
All right. Well, we'll keep an eye on that one. But like I said, we're going rapid fire. So thanks for the question, Scott. This one from 1R Lawson. Do you think we'll get another QB commit, and who will it be? A little bit more of a development, another kind of under the radar one from today. Ty Hopkins has been in the headlines recently. He's a 2025 quarterback, originally from San Antonio, Texas. Was verbally committed to TCU, and he made 2 massive decisions in the span of like 24 hours. He's going to be transferring to IMG Academy in Bradenton, Florida to finish his high school career. And then he also decided to flip from TCU to SMU earlier today. The comment that I'll put there is that was kind of the biggest name that we were keeping an eye on for Oregon quarterback recruiting, in addition to Achilles Smith Jr. here in the 25 class. But Hawkins was talking with Will Stein, and it looked like he was trying to get him out for SNL at the end of the month. But him committing to his second school and him being an in-state guy to Texas makes that one an interesting wrinkle.
Oregon does not currently need a second quarterback. And I say that now in July, a lot can happen. You're going to see the transfer portal or transfer talk heat up come late October, November. And I think a lot of eyes are on Austin Novosad. I'm not going to dance around it. I think you're looking at a really good quarterback that maybe wants his shot and isn't sure that it's in Eugene. I'm not sliding him, and I'm not saying he's transferring. I think that's the key to the whole thing. If Oregon loses Novosad or for whatever reason, Dante Moore jumps in the portal again, which seems unlikely, or, Luke Moga decides after 1 year that he's not happy at Oregon, I'm not sure Oregon takes the second quarterback unless one of those three basically opt to jump into the portal, if that makes sense. Now, that said, I think they're keeping some options open in case that does happen. For me, I feel like I'm picking on A&M here, but I think Oregon will continue conversations with Houston Longstreet, the Texas A&M quarterback commit. And if that should happen later on, I think you see a bigger push for him. I think he's the guy they'd like to get if that's the case.
And yeah, just to chime in a little bit here on Hassan Longstreet, I got to see him at the Elite 11 last month, and that dude put on a show. I think the thing with him that I've always been skeptical about is he's really physically gifted, probably has the strongest arm I've seen in person, if not one of them. But he just dominated on that circuit with all the different events that they had them go through. And I'm definitely excited to get out to Corona. Well, hopefully I don't have to go out to Corona because I hate driving there. But I want to see him this season and see what he can do in a game setting with another year of experience under his belt. Last one for us today, Justin, from Andrew, big time fan of the show. He's always here. Olugbode must be going somewhere else, right? I think that's Donovan or Dominic Olugbode. The fact that I don't completely know his name shows you that Oregon is really probably not in the mix. I mean, I think I would have a better feel for it, or I would at least know his full name if Oregon was really involved here. But I think this is a situation where, a player puts Oregon among their top schools, but I'm certainly not expecting it.
No, I think he'd really, I don't know if you can hear there he goes. Okay. We got a couple fires around here, so they're putting him out. And I live by the airport. Anyways, Donovan Olugbode has loved Oregon, has always put a hat on the table, but Oregon is not really pushed there. So I would imagine he goes elsewhere. I'll be honest, I don't really know where because I haven't tracked his recruitment at all.
Okay. Simple enough. Well, Justin, it's been an awesome stream. Admittedly, a little bit longer than we were planning, but we had such an awesome turnout from the fans. So any final remarks before we get out of here?
No, just make sure you guys are liking and subscribing. Help us grow that YouTube channel. Puts a little bit more money in our pocket, and then we can up our production value along with it. Thank you, guys.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, before we get out of here, guys, do us a favor. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and then come see us at ScoopDuck. Come see us at ScoopDuck.com for $1. I think that gets you 3 months of premium access, which is a pretty phenomenal deal. We are in the last full month of the calendar year without football, which is amazing sentence to hear come out of my mouth. And then, Justin and I are grinding to get you guys the best coverage possible. So definitely come check us out, and then share the show, share the Ducks Dish podcast with your friends, with your family, and with other Duck fans. And we'll see you in the next episode of the Ducks Dish podcast.